Australian schools are about to have a national curriculum for the first time since Federation, with a return to what the Prime Minister calls the basics in grammar, literature, science and maths, with history focused much more on the Asia-Pacific region. The draft curriculum was rolled out today for discussion over the next 3 months, and the federal government expects it to be implemented through next year, after broad agreement from state and territory education ministers. But the National Education Union has questioned the pace of change and whether there'll be enough time and resources for teachers to adapt. The federal opposition also argues the curriculum is politically biased towards a black armband view of Australian history, with particular reference to Aboriginal history. Heather Hewitt reports.
They're our citizens of the future. In every state and territory, they're being taught under different education systems, and the federal government thinks patchy standards are letting them down. This is its solution.
After 110 years, next year, 2011, Australia will have its national curriculum for the first time.
Every education minister, state and territory, has agreed that they will teach the national curriculum.
This is in English, it's in maths, it's in science, it's in history. And what we're on about is making sure that the absolute basics of knowledge, the absolute basics of education are taught right across the country.
For the next 3 months, there'll be intense debate in the community and in the teaching profession about what this all means. From the start of primary school through to Year 10, in every classroom nationwide, there's to be greater emphasis on grammar, phonics and literature for starters, and history will feature at an early age.
For us, the greatest concern has been the lack of consultation with the profession. The engagement of the profession has been totally inadequate.
For teachers and parents, I think what this will offer is a clarity that we don't always have across the country as a whole about what it is students should be learning.
We just think it makes good common sense to have some consistency around the nation.
I'm not sure that having a national curriculum is going to encourage creativity or competition between the states or innovation in education.
There has been so much squabbling over this, so much fighting, so much disagreement, that in fact it's time we got on with the business of doing it.
Though the government has released a blueprint for discussion, its mind looks pretty well made up, especially since it says the states are on board. One of the driving forces appears to have been the 80,000 students who move interstate annually because their parents hold jobs in areas like defence. They stand to be the big beneficiaries of a national curriculum.
I'm quite happy that they're doing that because it is difficult moving from state to state, and if you're lower in the class and you go to a new school and it's a lot harder and the education system's a lot more strict, then yeah, you'd have trouble, but if it's all the same, it'd be very good.
Monique is 15 years old and has just started at her 5th school, Holsworthy High School, southwest of Sydney. She's repeating Year 10 after moving from Darwin. Both her parents work in defence. She's typical of many students at this school, which caters heavily to the defence community.
They are dislocated socially when they move, but to be dislocated academically is an extra burden that will be taken away from us. I think that will be one of the big steps forward.
I'm not sure we should decide an entire curriculum based on a proportion of families who move. What we have to look at is what is best for the students, and I think the competing state curricula, whereby different states do different things in different ways, I think has overall been proved to be a good system. Handing things to Canberra, removed from parents, removed from schools, I think is really problematic, and we've just seen in the last few weeks the issues of what happens when Canberra does something that they can't manage properly.
We actually surveyed this amongst our members, and over 5,000 people responded, and 96% were positive about the development of a national curriculum.
Positive too, according to the survey, about greater focus on Asia in the teaching of history in secondary schools, despite complaints from some quarters.
When we have teachers who are told to teach Indigenous perspectives and Asian perspectives, but not to give a basic understanding of Western civilisation, then I think we have an issue.
There's no proposal to throw out European or English history indeed, but to make sure that students better understand Australia in a world context. So even, for example, when they're studying the European settlement in Australia, they should be looking at European expansion more generally during that period.
There have been unsuccessful attempts over the past 30 years to introduce a national curriculum. The biggest sticking point this time looks set to be not so much the curriculum itself, but how and when to implement it without too much of a rush.
Okay, so you're looking down at the possibilities as well?
Education unions and principals want fixed assurances about retraining programs for teachers, who'll fund them, and whether they'll be in a reasonable time frame.
We are now approaching 2011, the date when this curriculum is supposed to be implemented in our schools, and to date there is yet to be articulated any implementation plan with associated budget for the implementation of the national curriculum. A curriculum in itself, whether old or new, does not improve educational outcomes. Educational outcomes may be improved if the curriculum is implemented properly, properly resourced and properly supported, and that includes professional development for teachers.
History is going to be quite new for primary teachers. We've never had a standalone history subject before. We know from our research that 18% of teachers said they had the necessary expertise to teach science. That means there's a lot of teachers out there who are needing more professional development.
The principals and teachers are being asked to do a lot. This new curriculum is a heavy workload on them, and it also is a major pressure on teachers who are under a lot of strain at the moment.
The federal government plans to trial the national curriculum in 155 schools this year, and today highlighted next year's rollout date, though the authors of the blueprint say it's not quite that straightforward.
States have agreed that they will introduce from the beginning of 2011, and I think all that will mean in some states samples of schools will become pilot schools for the new curriculum. What the states have agreed is that they will introduce it from 2000 or not later than 2013.
Now, our worry is that states may try to rebadge the national curriculum and perhaps do a bit of a mix and match, and we'll end up with a curriculum, a national curriculum in name only.
I scream, you scream.
Education and who's running it is a controversial area at the best of times, but since the debate is now wide open, some lobby groups want the federal government to go just one step further and get rid of different school starting ages in different states.
If we're going to have a common curriculum, let's have a common starting age. So it would be good to hear all the governments talk about implementing that or introducing that very soon.
Don't expect too much talk about that in a hurry. Federal and state governments found it a long and tough enough road to get this far with a national curriculum blueprint.
That report from Heather Ewart.